So whatever stage you're in your business, you have to make the decision, am I going to invest in my brand or not? And whether you're at the start, you've got a few different things to think about. And whether you're halfway through and you're like starting to grow your business and it's really expanding and scaling, then you also need to consider it. And so in this episode, I want to honestly chat through with you, what are the pros and cons to investing in your branding now or doing it later? Obviously, this as a designer, I'm probably going to have a few more pros. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little biased there, but I do have some cons that are worth thinking about. So I want to help you think through those as well. And also share with you the pros to getting your branding done now so you can feel a little bit inspired and a little bit motivated that this might be something that you should work on in your business, or at least know when you can kind of schedule it in the future to make sure that you can make the most of it. So let's dive into this episode. So officially welcome to another episode of the Seriously in Business podcast. I am so thrilled to have you here and I'm so thrilled to share with you this episode. It is one that I think is really important for all business owners to know, especially for those of you at the start of your business's journey, but those of you who are haven't really thought about your branding too much yet. And I'm going to go into two different things. I'm going to go into the pros and cons of investing in your branding now or later. I'm also going to go into the short and long-term effects of those pros and cons. And so, well, just to set the stage, I guess, to invest in your branding, I'm talking about your visual branding in particular. I'm talking about your logo, but I'm also talking about your whole brand. So like, how do you appear visually to people? That's everything from your logo to the way your website looks, to the way your Instagram looks, to the way your flyers look. Anything visual that anyone sees of your business is part of your visual branding, and that's what I help you with. That's what I love to teach and equip people with. But there's a time in all businesses where you need to invest in this, and I want to let you know the pros and cons to waiting it out or to doing it now. And so first I'm going to go with the cons because that, I'm going to start list is a lot shorter, but it is still really important. So what are the cons to investing in your branding now? What are the cons to investing in your branding now? The first thing is, this is especially the case for small businesses that are just starting out. Maybe you're thinking about starting a business or you're in that first year point and you're kind of like wading in rather than going all like you're jumping in straight away. So if you're in that early stage of business, a con to working on your branding straight away is that you don't actually know your business very well. This can look at like a few different things. Firstly, you may not know who your target audience is. A lot of what I teach when I'm teaching you to create your brand is to know who your audience is so you can create graphics that will appeal to them, graphics that will draw them in, graphics that help them to want to work with you. And so if you're just kind of starting out your business, you don't really know who you're working with yet, unless you've kind of gone through that process already, unless you've maybe you've run a business before and you've worked that kind of stuff out. But a lot of people when they first start don't know who they want to work with yet. Even me, I wanted to work with absolutely anyone and everyone because I was terrified that I wouldn't have enough work if I niched down. Didn't turn out to be the case. It's a whole mindset thing to work through. Not the point of this podcast, but it is really important that we do know who we want to work with. I was actually talking to a client today, a student who's learning design from me, and she said how, I'm going to tell you a few stories about her today. She was saying how she thought she'd want to just work with males and females and just kind of anyone that kind of needed her service. But as she's kind of grown her business and actually worked in the field longer, she's worked out that she actually works better with females. And so she wants to kind of niche down into that area more. And so her branding actually has to change. And so that's kind of a part that you want to think about is, do I know my audience? And on that, as a second kind of point is, do I know what I want to do? Do I know the kind of service I want to give? Like for me, when I first started, I just had the idea, graphic designer. I didn't really care what I did. Anything at all that I could physically do, I would do for you if you needed me. And so I wasn't really kind of pushing into any particular niche, wasn't like a logo specialist or a brand specialist. I wasn't a social media specialist. I was just graphic designer. And so I didn't have this input into what I wanted to do. And so when you're first starting your business, you may not have a really strong idea of what you want to do. You may not know what your price point is going to be. You may not know the exact services you want to offer. And you might just want to kind of feel those out as you move along, as you find clients, as you kind of put yourself out there. And so creating a brand before you know those things, your brand might actually not line up with what you actually decide you want to do. And so it might actually take some time for you to work that out. And so maybe investing in a brand straight away isn't the way to go. And lastly, it's the idea that it costs money. It takes time to work on your branding, and time you usually have a little bit more of when you're starting a business because you don't probably have as many clients yet taking up all of your time, but you usually don't have as much money, and usually creating a really great brand does cost a lot of money. For example, in my studio, if you want to work with us to design your brand, it costs upwards of $2,000 minimum to design your brand for you. And so that's a lot of money for a new business to invest in if you're not coming from having like this lot of money saved up to invest in a brand, particularly if you're doing an online business. Bricks and mortar businesses usually have a bit more capital to invest. And so that is a really big decision. Do I want to invest in this? Obviously, I love offering design at a cheaper price. And so if, just as a side point, if you do ever want to learn design and want to learn how to create your own brand cheaper, I have a course that on sale is a little bit cheaper than any of those other options. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the future. But what I want to say is that you do have to make those decisions around that time and money piece, because do you have the money to invest in a brand now, or should that be better off spent in other things? There are so many decisions and in things to invest in when you're starting a business. Maybe you need your website. Maybe you need to register your ABN. Maybe you need to buy particular, like for me, I needed a laptop. I needed Photoshop. I needed all these different things. And when I was starting my business, I didn't really have money to invest in that. And so it can be a little bit scary at the start to invest money in our businesses. Although every time I have invested in my business, it has, except for once, it has paid itself back and been worthwhile. But I get it. It can be really scary. So those are the three cons of it costs money and or time. It takes, you might not know what your niche is. So you might be actually creating graphics that don't appeal to your target audience. And you might not know exactly what you want to do yet. So what you're creating doesn't actually line up. Now I want to talk to the pros of investing in your branding now rather than putting it off. And so there's quite a few here, but I'm going to try roll them into a little bit of a ball so you don't get too overwhelmed with my ginormous list. And I also want to talk to these in those two parts that I mentioned of short-term effects and long-term effects. So firstly, it's clarity. When you do work on your brand and when you're forced to make those decisions, I see this all the time with my students and with my clients, is that when you work on a brand, you have to make decisions. You have to say, all right, I think I'm going to push into this area and I think I'm going to work with this niche. Even if you don't know, you have to make those decisions. Otherwise, you can't create a cohesive brand. And so sometimes you actually just need to get forced into making those decisions. Maybe they're not going to be right. Maybe you need to evolve your brand into the future, but you have to actually find that clarity. And that clarity not only helps with your branding, it also helps with your business's messaging. It helps you to write content for your social media. It helps you to write content for your website, helps you to write content for your flyer. Like in essence, to start a business successfully, you really do need to have that clarity. And so knowing that to begin with, knowing that when you create, when you think about a brand, you have to actually make those decisions. It helps you to form that clarity. And so short term, that helps you to actually just know what the heck you're doing and how to put yourself out there. And long term is that also helps you to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. You're heading in a consistent direction. So you're not confusing your audience. You're not muddying the waters around what you do. It's really clear to everyone what you do, including yourself, so you can have really clear messaging and really clear branding. So the clarity piece is really, really great. And doing our branding helps us and almost forces us to actually think about that rather than just like skating by and thinking, oh, I'm just going to start on that later. And then you kind of don't really attract or appeal to anyone because no one actually understands what you do, including yourself. All right, the next piece is confidence. So many times business owners really, really struggle to show up. And by show up, I mean they might struggle to post on their Instagram. They might struggle to share on their website. They might struggle to put an ad out there. They struggle to show up in their business because they don't actually have the confidence that what they're putting out there is very good. So many times I talk to business owners before, like as they're starting to work with me, like, I'm just not posting on my social media. I'm just not doing this. I'm just not putting myself out there. And usually it's because they're not confident with what they're sharing. They don't think that their posts look great. They don't think that their Instagram looks good. They don't think their website looks good. So they don't share it with people. Even I did this at the start of my business. I wasn't sure that my branding looked great. And so I was kind of really nervous to even share it with anyone. And so when we have that confidence, when we invest in our branding earlier on, we have that confidence sooner and we're actually able to put ourselves out there sooner. And the short-term effects of that, obviously, you get to actually share yourself. You get to actually build momentum in your business and you get to actually put content out there so people can find you. If we're not ever putting ourselves out there, people have to find us. And the main way they're going to find us is word of mouth. And if that's your only method of marketing, you're not going to be able to grow and scale as much as you would like to. And so having that ability and that confidence to show up confidently is really great for the short term and also really great for the long term, because you can imagine if you're not showing up, then that might impact me today. But if I'm not showing up week after week after week after week after month after month after month after year, imagine the long-term effects of that showing up on my business. Imagine the way that people can't find me over and over again, I can't build up my rapport, I can't build up this brand recognition, I can't build up all these things because I'm not confident in showing up. I'm not confident at sharing this great business strategy that I have in my brain out into the world because I'm too scared. I'm too inconfident. I'm not sure that's a word. I'm not confident enough to be able to share that with the world. And so when we have really great branding that we know looks amazing and that we feel confident on how to use, we're able to show up confidently and able to put our ideas out there, become a thought leader in our space, share our great content so that people can find us and build our business that way. Another pro of having your branding done early is this creation of brand loyalty. So if you don't have a brand, imagine this is another piece of to the showing up confidence piece too, is if you don't have a brand, you don't know what to post. And so you might post one thing and then you're like, that doesn't look right. That doesn't match with this thing. And then the next day you might post like something else and maybe it looks totally different to the first thing you posted. And you don't know what to post. So that was the confidence piece, but you also aren't building that brand loyalty, that brand recognition. Like if I was posting like a khaki green post one day and then a really crisp black and white post the next day and a fluoro yellow post the next day, people aren't going to be understanding what I do, which is a future point, but also they're not building any recognition or loyalty with my business or my brand because they can't form a connection with it. Nothing makes sense. Nothing is like something that they're seeing over and over again to form that recognition with it. And so short term, if you're not having this really great brand recognition, people aren't going to be able to recognize you. And so short term, that means like if someone was to even go to your Instagram page, it doesn't look consistent. So it looks like you don't really know what you're doing. I haven't really thought things through. You're not really committed to this business. It means that if someone goes from your Instagram to your website to your flyer and they all look different or haphazard, they're going to be confused and not know if they want to work with you. And then in the long term, you're really having trouble building that recognition. It means that every time you post to Instagram, you have to rebuild up that rapport. I'm like, actually, this is me. I'm just posting a little bit differently today, rather than building off what you've already shared, building off that rapport. And it helps people to actually recognize you. People always ask me, how to stand out, Jacqui? A great way to stand out is to have brand recognition. It's to use the same design over and over again so that people are able to recognize you and stop when they see you. I know people always stop when they see my purple posts in the Instagram feed if they're interested in my business because they've built that rapport with my brand. So that brand loyalty piece is really important for the short term and for the long term. The next thing that is a really great pro to creating your brand now is a really great first impression. I've spoken about this a lot in my past episodes and past podcasts and past videos, but the first impression is really, really important because if someone comes to your Instagram or comes to your website and they don't instantly understand what you do, it doesn't instantly look professional, it doesn't instantly look consolidated and actually thought through, people are either going to think you're brand new in business and you don't know what you're doing, so they don't want to work with you, or they're going to think that you're not really committed to this long term because things are just looking really haphazard, or they're just going to get confused. They just actually don't understand what you're doing because your branding isn't speaking that message for you. A brand and visuals are actually so good because visuals speak, I think it's 60,000 times faster than a word. And so if someone sees a bright yellow color, they're already feeling feelings of like playfulness and fun and energy. But if that's not matching up to your brand message or what you want your business to represent, it's going to be confusing for your audience. And so that can come across and play across in so many ways. I'm going to talk about that soon. But in essence, how can you create a really great first impression? So in the short term, people are actually like, wow, that's cool. I want to work with that business. And long term, you're actually attracting people over and over and over again. Like if you make one first bad impression, that's a bummer. It happens. It happens all the time. That's fine. But if you are consistently making bad first impressions with every single person that you've spent money and time getting to actually even find you on Instagram or visit your website or look at your flyer, put all this effort into getting them there, and that first impression isn't clear to them that you're a professional, that you're a trustworthy business, that you do this, this, and this, then you're losing that person. And you're losing them over and over and over again. And again, if you do that for weeks or years, then it adds up to lots and lots and lots of lost leads and lost business. All right, the next thing that branding does, which I've mentioned this a little bit already, is branding helps to portray your message. Branding helps because of that idea that visuals communicate 60,000 times faster, is that people are making judgments. They're looking at what you do and what you share, and they're trying to work out, what's your price point? What kind of person do you work with? What kind of person are you? And they're making all of those decisions on not only your words, but also your visuals. And so if you're a really high-end business, but you have visuals that look like you just charge $2 for your service, then that's going to be really confusing and jarring to your audience. It's not communicating the right brand message. If you want someone to feel really calm and relaxed and grounded when they work with you, but you use really fluoro colors, again, there's this miscommunication. People just aren't understanding what you do. And so it's really important that your branding matches what your business does. And so if you don't invest in your branding right now, then over and over again, you're sending the wrong message. You're sending the wrong message of your price point. You're sending the wrong message about what you do and who you are and who you serve and what you're like to work with. And people either aren't getting attracted, or the wrong people are getting attracted, and you're getting the wrong people wanting to work with you, and the right people are just scrolling past or not looking at your website or not looking at your flyer or not looking at whatever visual piece you're presenting to them because it doesn't resonate with them, doesn't attract them, or it doesn't speak the right brand message. If I was looking for, say I was hiring a masseuse and I wanted someone who was really, really great at making you feel really calm and grounded, but I found a masseuse online that had those really fluoro colors, I'd probably think that maybe they're more of a sports massage therapist, and I'm not really interested in that, so I wouldn't hire them. Even if they were the perfect person for me, I wouldn't have known it because their brand messaging and their visuals weren't communicating the right message to me. It didn't make sense to me as a client, as a customer. As a future customer, they've now lost me. And so in the short term, you're losing customers. In the long term, you're losing so many customers. And lastly, it just deteriorates your credibility. If you're putting stuff out there that doesn't look consistent, that doesn't look professional, it rubs off on your branding and it looks like that maybe you're not credible, you're not trustworthy, you're not professional. And so whether you have a brand or not is one thing, but even know whether you know how to design good graphics is another thing. Are you actually communicating really, really well in your visuals so that people actually understand what you're saying? Like, is your text large enough to read? Is your text, are the fonts that you're using professional and actually look like a proper business, or do they look like you've just jumped on word art, if you know what I mean? And so your branding and your graphics as a whole can communicate your value. It can communicate your credibility. And if we're not investing in that now, it's going to be really confusing to our audience, and it's going to deteriorate how much people want to work with us because they don't think that we're a credible, trustworthy business. And so those are the things that you really need to think about. Is it really important right now for me to invest in those pros, like the clarity and having that confidence to post and having really clear communication about what I am and what I do, what my price point is? Do I really want that great first impression? Because right now and tomorrow and the next day, maybe it's not the end of the world, but the long-term effects of the longer we keep putting that off, the more clients that we're losing, the more that we're not showing up, and the more that we're not able to communicate our credibility, our loyalty, the price point that we do charge and how much, and maybe even the ability to charge more because our branding speaks to the value of what we do. And so those are some things to think about when you're working out, am I going to invest my branding now or later? You can put it off and you can just use any random CANVA template that you find and put something out there. And that's better than not showing up at all. I need you to hear that, because if you're not showing up at all because of that lack of confidence piece, I would rather you show up with bad branding than not show up at all, because you might still catch a couple of clients, and that's better than no clients. There's those pros that I just spoke about. There's those cons. If you don't have the money right now, it can be tricky. Maybe start to inhale some of my free content. I've got a free challenge called the Seriously in Business Challenge that really helps step you through the things you want to think about at the start, watching some of my free YouTube videos. Or if you do have a little bit of money, investing in my course, DIY Design My Biz, can be really, really helpful, because that's going to help you to have a really great brand and to actually do that really well. I want to tell you the story of that client that I mentioned earlier right now. Nearly forgot. I would have kicked myself so much if I forgot. So she has gone through my course. She's probably been a student for over a year now. She went through my course and she created what I think was a really great brand. But she realized that her niche has changed and that she actually wants to show up in a different way. She felt like, one, she did want to target women, and not just women and men. And she also realized that, two, she wanted to represent herself in a different way. She felt like she had to be more professional than she really wanted to be. And she probably learned from watching me and my brand that you can be professional but still be really fun. You can be professional but still use bright colors and quirky designs. And so she wants to change her brand because of those two things. But the fact that she is in my course means that she can do that. It doesn't mean that she has to go through and hire a designer again and go through that whole expensive and long process, which, if you have the money, is really worthwhile investing in. I guarantee that. But at the same time, for her, she doesn't have that kind of money to invest in a graphic designer. And so what she can now do is go through my course again, and she's going to create a new brand from it. She's going to work out her new target audience. She's going to work out her new mood board. She's going to work out these new things for her branding. And because she's got those skills already from working with me, she can then create her own incredible brand and logo that's newer, that represents her new target audience, and that represents her in a more authentic way. And it's so great that we can do that. Like, that's one of the reasons I have my course, because when we start our business, if you're in those early stages, when we start our business, you may not know who your target audience is, exactly who you want to work with, and exactly have the confidence to show up as you yet. And so you might just create something for now, use that consistently for a while, build up your audience, learn who you want to work with, And then when you're feeling like you're starting to outgrow that, instead of needing to spend money again on a designer after you spent money the first time, you can actually just go back through the course and create your own new brand. And you have the skills to do that. So that's why I really do believe in learning and equipping yourself with this, especially if you're in the early stages of your business. And so if you're interested in that, please let me know. You can head to DIY.designmybiz.com and read more about it. Or if you just want to kind of have a bit of a taster of what I have to offer, head to that Seriously in Business challenge. There's also a little discount for my course once you go through that challenge. Shh, I haven't said that out loud. And so just go through that as well, and it'll be really helpful for you. And so it's really, really important that we think through these things, that we work out, what am I willing to let go? Am I willing to kind of just use some Canva templates for now and kind of just fudge together a brand? Or are those pros of getting a brand done now really worth it for me in my business right now? So I hope that's been helpful for you. I'll pop a list of all those pros and cons into the blog post that goes along with this or into the show notes. So have a look at those if you want a bit of a summary of that, or just go through and listen to this again. So thank you so much for watching today. And if you do want some more design and support, head to that Seriously in Business challenge, and you'll be able to have, it's just 3 free little videos. It's going to help you step through your brand and help you work out some of this stuff. It's going to be really helpful so you can actually build a robust brand for free, and then maybe choose to upgrade to the DIY course if you feel like you want some support there. So thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to share with you our special guest episode next week. And if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Feel free to leave a comment on what kind of pro, what kind of con was most useful to you today, or what you're kind of thinking is best for your business, or if you've got any questions, feel free to pop it in there. And I also want to encourage you, if you're listening on the podcast, to give it a review. I love getting reviews because it's been able to help me to actually listen to you. Like so many times as a podcast, you have no clue who's listening to you. And so being able to do a review helps me to know who's listening. It helps me to know what you're like and what's actually helping you. And also helps my podcast to find more ears to help. And if you leave a review, I want to shout you out in the podcast. So if you leave a review, keep an ear out in the podcast because I might shout you out, read out your comment, and say a massive thank you to you from me. So thank you for being here. I'll see you next week for another episode. In the meantime, bye.